Okay, so hello and welcome to this short video introducing our BA Languages and English Literature degree programme here at the University of Reading. My name's Dr. Sophie Heywood and I'm an Associate Professor in French, and I'm also the Director of Admissions for the department. And I'm joined by my colleague Chloe. Perhaps you could introduce yourself as well.
Sure, thank you, Sophie. So my name's Chloe Houston. I'm an Associate Professor in Early Modern Drama in the Department of English Literature, and I am also the Admissions Tutor for English Literature and Creative Writing.
Lovely, thank you. Okay, so we're going to talk to you all about this degree programme, what kind of things you can do with it, and what you learn with this. But first of all, I think it's really important to answer the big question, which is why do this joint degree? Why study languages with English literature? So Chloe and I have been talking about this a little bit. And the first thing I would really underscore is it is a joint degree that works together so nicely. When you study languages, the way that we really teach languages here at the University of Reading is through the study of literature, culture, film, history and politics. And that approach really works together very, very nicely with English literature. So the kind of students that I've seen, the way they really, by the end of this degree, are so articulate, really good at communicating, really, really good at dissecting text, analysing literature, and operating at an impressively high level across two different languages. So they develop this real mastery of English, the English language, English literature, plus they have that ability to work in another language and read literature and art and culture in the target language of their choice. So I would say right away that kind of ability to work across at a really high level two different languages is a really, really prized skill. That degree can those kind of skills can really give you the edge in all sorts of careers, and also I think above all is really stimulating and exciting. And I think that kind of leads me to hand over to Chloe and what you were saying earlier on about that kind of those skills.
So true, because I think the kinds of skills that you develop as a student of modern languages and English literature sit so well together, don't they? And they really enrich each other. So I often notice that students on these degree programs will make observations in teaching that show how they're drawing on their knowledge or their experience in their other subject, and they just fire off in all sorts of exciting ways. So it's really rewarding, I think, in that respect. Certainly in English literature, one of the things that we emphasise is that the study of English literature today is really much more the study of literatures in English than it is the literature of England. And that means that we take a very global approach to teaching English, and we're drawing texts from all around the world from different heritages, traditions, backgrounds and cultures. And that means, I think, that this degree programme is particularly timely and it fits together in a particularly nice way for that kind of study, because of course it means that you can sit texts from different languages and different heritages and backgrounds together, and you can really fruitfully compare them. And that often gives students actually the opportunity to do really original and exciting work, because if you're studying, say, one text for the French part of your degree and you're studying something else for English literature, you may well find that those texts speak to each other in all sorts of interesting ways, and that you're able to draw that out in your analysis and your writing in ways that may be, you know, really original and fresh and exciting. So I think it's a very enjoyable combination as well. Actually, students often find that it's, as you say, very enriching and exciting to put these subjects together.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. Thank you. And I think I would just add what Chloe was kind of saying there about, you know, in English and of course in languages, we really do think globally, and you're studying texts from across the world, or in, for example, in German you'll be studying texts produced by authors who have perhaps migrated, and thinking in you know, but all the kinds of different ways in which we're producing literature and what that means today, you really develop this strong sort of sense of intercultural awareness, you know, knowledge, and open up your eyes to different ways of seeing the world, different perspectives, which are really important skills, as well as really enjoyable things to do, to broaden your horizons. And that is then really kind of reinforced by the third year of this degree, which is spent either working or studying abroad. So you don't just kind of gain knowledge of other literatures, but you also have that really strong intercultural experience from your year abroad. So again, you know, just something that develops a whole portfolio of skills that is really valued by employers. So what we're going to do now then is talk you through exactly what that looks like here at Reading. So very basically, the degree itself is a 4-year degree, as I've just said, because it includes a year abroad. And like most of the joint degrees that we run here, it is an even split. So you spend half your time in the English Literature department and half your time with the Modern Languages team. And you may not be aware, but you can study the languages, our core languages, which are either French, German, Spanish, or Italian. They are available from either beginner's level. So if you've never studied them at all, that's absolutely fine. We have long experience of teaching from beginners. Or if you've just managed to do a GCSE, you can enter the intermediate stream. Or if you have an A-level, you'll go into the advanced. And all by the end of the course, if you've studied and done your year abroad, then the idea is that you should be able to achieve near native level, so all graduate at the same level. Okay, so now I would just like to talk a little bit about our research, because Reading University is a research-intensive university. So you'll be learning with the experts, learning with people who are writing, publishing, living, breathing the subject that they're teaching. And this really underpins the ethos and also the kind of topics that you study. So Chloe, can I hand over to you? Would you mind chatting to us a little bit about the kind of research going on in the English Literature department, please?
Sure. Well, the English Literature department at Reading is sort of medium-sized as English literature departments in the country go, and we have over 30 members of staff, all of whom are active in their field, whatever that may be. And the benefit of that quite high number of staff is that we do have experts working in a wide range of areas of English literature, both in terms of chronology, so you can, you know, start with Beowulf and Old English and work your way right up to texts that haven't yet even been published, but are you know, kind of just being created now. And also in terms, as I mentioned before, of geography and global reach and so on. So it's a very broad and diverse curriculum, and that really is drawing on a wide range of research strengths. So we like to think that whatever you're interested in, whether it's something that you're coming to us with or whether you develop a specific focus for your interest while you're with us, that we'll be able to find someone who can work with you on that and offer teaching that really draws directly on that research, which is really rewarding both for staff and students. I think it means that we're able to work on, you know, kind of cutting edge and the most exciting, most interesting ideas that we're encountering in our own research in the classroom. And that's, as I say, I think a really exciting experience for students too.
No, and I should say, in the languages department here, actually, we work quite closely with a lot of colleagues over in English literature. So I can certainly back up that there's all sorts of really exciting research going on. We through our interest in translation and the publishing industry in particular, we do quite a lot of work with colleagues over in the English literature department, thinking about, you know, how do books cross borders, what gets translated, what doesn't, and how books are made, who makes them and why. And I would second also what Chloe's saying about that kind of really exciting environment that comes with working and teaching in a research-intensive university. There's a real diversity of the kind of things that you can study and new perspectives that can be open to you. Over in languages then, so I've already mentioned translation and publishing. Those are two subjects where it really connects very closely with what what's going on in the English literature department. We offer expertise in linguistics, literature and identity across the globe. We also have a lot of several colleagues working on very impactful research work that really goes beyond just sort of what's going on in the university, but really trying to make a difference working with charities and NGOs, and also quite a number of colleagues working on things like war studies, particularly in German, thinking about post-war Germany, and also in French. So now I'd like us just to talk about how that research environment is shaping the kind of modules that you can study with us. So first of all, that excitement about that kind of cutting edge work that we're doing in our research, we bring that commitment to innovation to the modules and the way we teach them as well. So I'll just take from languages the example here of how we try to ensure that the way we teach and the way we assess our students is quite diverse. So we offer them opportunities. They've had opportunities to produce things like radio programs, podcasts, make publications as part of their studies, you know, doing things that actually also again have that kind of real world application and are very valued when students then go onto the jobs market. And I'm sure the same is going on in English literature. What kind of things do you do then in English literature, Chloe?
Yeah, well, similarly, we try and include a sort of diverse range of different kinds of assessments. And with English, you know, the most traditional assessments are things like coursework essays, and we do use those. They give students the chance to do plenty of reading and reflecting, and you know, using their own ideas and drawing on other people's work too. But we've introduced a few different sorts of assessment, which have really given our students the chance, I think, to show a wider range of skills, but also perhaps to tailor assessments a little bit more to themselves and to the kind of things that they enjoy. So one example of that would be using something like a blog or a learning journal, where students get to, you know, put in an entry every week or every couple of weeks and to really reflect on what they're learning. And that goes across the board, really. I think it also applies to, for example, the more creative modules that we teach in the Department of English Literature. So that might include creative writing, where assessments are not so much through essays, but through portfolios of creative work that you put together. And other non-creative modules use portfolios too, so that you're sort of putting together smaller bits of work, and students can be more selective about both the text that they're assessed on and the ways in which they're assessed, which I think has real benefits for student performance as well.
Mm-hmm. We do similar things in language, actually. I think that is a really, really important, offering that opportunity to students to kind of keep, you know, kind of reflecting on how they're learning across their degree is really, really valuable. Okay, so now we're going to whiz you through, just to give you a taster of some of the many modules that you can choose from on this degree. So starting off with English literature.
So in English literature, in your first year, you take 3 core modules, and those modules are research and criticism, which is a broad foundational module that introduces you to a range of different kinds of prose writing, and also really embeds some of the study skills that you need for the study of English literature. And then poetry in English, which is a broad survey module of English poetry, starting with medieval lyric and going right up until the present day. And then genre and context, which looks at the literature of 2 specific historic periods. So we do Renaissance stage in the first term. So we look at drama and performance. And then in the second term, we look at a couple of Victorian novels, and we look at the particular context for those. So those 3 modules provide you with the real kind of underpinning of the rest of your degree programme. And after that, you know, in English, as in your modern languages elements of your degree, you'll find that there's a really wide range of choice in terms of what you can do. And on the left-hand side of the slide here, you can see some of the second year options that we would offer students on this sort of programme. So that might include modules based on specific authors like Chaucer and medieval narrative or Shakespeare. It might offer modules focused on specific periods like Victorian literature or Renaissance literature, for instance. Or it might offer modules which try and put together different sorts of subjects and topics, perhaps more critically, and encourage students to engage critically. So an example of that would be writing, gender and identity, which is a module that encourages students to think about different identities such as gender, race and sexuality, and to kind of interrogate those a little bit more in the work that they're reading. On the right-hand side of the slide here, you can see some of our third year options at the moment, and it's just not really possible, of course, to squash everything onto a slide. So I'd really encourage you to go off and have a look at our website or to email us if you've got questions about any of these particular modules. I've just included a few of our current popular ones. And one thing I'd emphasize about these is that, again, there's a very broad range, you know, that people are offering these sort of specialist research-based modules in the third year, which means you've got a lot of expertise to draw on. But also there are a number of modules which will really allow you to, firstly, to focus on interests that might you know, kind of mesh nicely with your language's interests. So global literature and translation is an example of a module that really sits so nicely between these two subjects, or utopia and dystopia, where we look at English and American literature, but where you can be assessed on, you can choose different texts to bring in for your assessment. So there's no reason why, if you were doing studying French, that you couldn't draw on a French text in your assessment for that module. And other modules which really try and place your studies within a contemporary context and let you think about how your studies are relevant to the world that you live in. And examples of that would be, for instance, the #MeToo module that we teach at Part 3, which is all about women's writing as resistance. It's about political and social context for women's writing in the 21st century. So much choice, but a lot of support in how you put those choices together to build up your programme.
Oh, there's so many exciting modules left.
You know, I always want to take all of them. Whenever I do these presentations, Sophie, I always think I just want to come back and do a degree, actually, and get to study some of it.
I have exactly the same thing when I'm presenting our modules. Yeah, it's
That's good.
So over in languages, in our first year, we do the same kind of thing, where we do broad introductory modules on the history and politics, and also the culture of the language regions, the regions and countries of the language that you're studying. And then we offer students the opportunity in second year and third year to really kind of follow their hearts a bit more and choose from a wide range of options. What I've done is I've grouped our modules together into various kind of themes and approaches, to give you a bit of a sense of some of the wide range of things that we can do. And I've started off with literatures and identities and publishing, because that is, I think, these are the modules that are quite often most popular with the languages and literature students. And across all the 4 languages, we have lots of literary experts or people who are interested in writing and identity and belonging and the making of books. So we range from Sherilyn, who teaches on writing in the Colombian conflict. We have modules on writers and published in Spain. Quite a few, we have a comparative module there. We offer some modules that compare across the different languages and are open to any language student. And those work particularly nicely, again, with some of the modules that Chloe talked about. And we do fantasy, children's books, all sorts of different approaches to literature. And we also have quite a lot of material on history modules where you can study history. And again, a lot of the time, actually, that distinction between literature and history that I've kind of established here it's not as sharp as that. And so often if we're thinking about literature, say the literature of the French Caribbean, then you're automatically going to be thinking about history. You're going to be thinking about decolonization, relations to the imperial power structures and so forth, and how that has shaped the way people write about themselves. And again, when we study history, you can see there we offer modules in things like the culture and revolution in modern Latin America. Again, you're going to be looking at cultural materials, literature, song, poetry, performance, all kinds of things. Or when you're studying the First World War, for example, Marjorie looks at letters that soldiers write home, impact of injury and war on psychology, study of psychology, but also she looks at propaganda. She looks at things like how governments sort of make people think about war and accept war and commemorate war. So again, literature students can do really kind of enrich the discussions that go on in those classes, and they do work quite nicely together. And finally, we do have several experts in linguistics in the department, and again, I think from a literary perspective, from a student of literature, looking at how languages work, how they develop, the history of language, how they shape identity, and people's very perceptions of who they are and reality, as in the popular comparative module that we run, Language and Power. Again, literary students, I think there's so much that you can really get from those modules. So in essence, really, I think it's a degree program, as we said, that can cohere really quite nicely. Now I would just briefly, in terms of the language modules, because that is the second component of the languages side of things, is you'll be doing each year a big language module where you develop the skills of reading, speaking, listening and translation. And here again, you'll be working in relatively small groups, working with contemporary authentic materials, discussing real world issues, looking at, say, how the Me Too movement or Black Lives Matter is played out in places like France or Spanish speaking countries or Germany. So again, I think our literary students can really actually enjoy. There's much to enjoy and much to kind of enrich both sides of the degree here. And there is, depending on your program, there is the option to study an additional language, so to pick up another language such as Arabic, British Sign Language, Chinese, French, German, Italian, Japanese, modern Greek or Russian or Spanish, to really kind of develop your profile as an internationalist. Briefly then, the third year of this degree programme is spent abroad. Now, for English literature and languages students, there are three options. You can study abroad, find a work placement, or work in a school as a languages assistant through the British Council scheme. And so if you're studying at a university, there's some interesting opportunities to study literature in a new university system from a completely different perspective. How in, perhaps we have, you could study literature in Havana in Cuba. How did they look at, what kind of different questions did they ask in literary studies? There's all kinds of interesting things you could do. And I thought at this point it might be quite interesting to ask Chloe actually what her perspective is from having taught students coming back from their year abroad from the English literature side.
Yeah, well, often I think it's a really positive experience to have that time. The study of any humanities subject, really, but especially I think languages and study of literature is really enriched by a variety of experience and by spending some time somewhere different. Because what we do when we read texts is we look through these windows into other worlds and we try and understand them, and that's the same whether you're reading something creative or something critical. And I think that that experience really helps your reading and it really enriches your studies. And I think particularly that sort of variety of experience and being able to draw on a broader range of studies that that you've done and different experiences that you've had can really stimulate you, and it can also mean that you really enjoy the work that you come back to, and you've got this fresh perspective. So I think it's very positive, especially for some of the more extended pieces of work that you might do. So for example, if you choose to do a dissertation in your final year, you've often got firstly a real capacity for independence and study and so on, but also a interesting and a different sort of perspective. I think it's very enriching, and I've seen lots of positive experiences from students who take that option on their programme.
Yeah, it is a real period of growth, I think, and you can really see the difference in their final year when they come back for study. Okay, thank you. So briefly then, these are the university partners that we have. I won't list them, but just to kind of highlight that we have all sorts of lovely, lovely partnerships here, all kinds of exciting places to go and study, not just in Europe, you can go further abroad, so to La Réunion in the Indian Ocean, or we have partnerships with Havana, University of Havana in Cuba, or in Puebla in Mexico. Then in terms of the year abroad work placements, this is quite a popular option, in part because you can also earn money, gain professional experience, and do something slightly different on your year abroad. And there's all sorts of ways in which we support our students with, CV writing, and interview strategies, workshops. We have a database of previous placements that we help students to sort of think about things that they could do, get them talking to the returners from the last year abroad to get ideas and tips. And you can see here there are all sorts of interesting places that students have gone to work, including in the publishing industry, in Parliament, in advertising. We've also sent students off to museums as well, all kinds of things that I think grads on this kind of programme would find, really, really stimulating and really good experience. So just to end then really on careers, because as I always say, but I think it's really worth underscoring, just the huge diversity of skills and knowledge that you've garnered over 4 years of studying on this kind of degree gives you all sorts of fantastic stories to tell on your CV. This kind of degree is one, I think, where students really, really develop this, get to explore and extend their passions and really, really make the most of their degree. And so they tend to have a lovely, lovely CV with all sorts of interesting things to talk about. And they go on to do careers in all kinds of sectors. I think humanities degrees like languages, with a language, with the sort of hard skill of language skills, really opens lots and lots of doors. So we see students going on to work in the civil service, all kinds of different international companies and organisations, charities, or as well going into things like teaching, journalism and publishing in the media and advertising. Those kind of sectors really do value the skills, the language skills, but also having articulate graduates who can really, really read closely, analyse texts and ideas carefully, and express themselves and communicate and have that real intercultural awareness. These are all really, really prized. Chloe, is there anything you would add to that in terms of your sort of perspective?
I think you've covered most of the areas, English literature graduates, and I think this applies to students on this programme, the sort of traditional routes are things like teaching and journalism and publishing, and obviously all different sorts of writing. But we see graduates going into such a wide range of careers these days. It's actually really hard to say, well, these are the places you'll go, because every year when we chat to our alumni and when people have come back, especially in recent years, and people have come back from graduation, they've already been working for a couple of years. And I'm sure it's the same for you, Sophie. I'm bumping into ex-students, and the number of things they tell me that they're doing is just so exciting and interesting, and such a wide range, things that I would never have predicted. And so there are so many different sorts of opportunities. And I think the way that these programs in particular, the way that your skills are developed and work together means that you really have a unique skill set to offer. So it's very clear to employers what's special and exciting about you, which is what you're trying to communicate when you go into the world of jobs and trying to find something. You want to show people, what is it about you that's interesting and different? What can you offer maybe that other people can't? What's different about your perspective? And when you've got a language study alongside literature in this way, it's so obvious to employers what you offer, and especially having that linguistic or having a language capacity with English literature is just absolute rocket fuel. And you really see people go so far because they're able to do things that other students just can't. So I think, yeah, it's so diverse, but often very successful options.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm just very briefly sort of developing some examples of this. Not all of these students have graduated from the Languages and English Literature programme, but I think they show you the kind of skills that we see developed in this programme and how they're applied, and how they've sort of, like Chloe says, given them sort of rocket fuel on the jobs market. So certainly Gina here on the right hand side, she works for the UK Health Security Agency and was doing a lot of briefing work during the pandemic. And she talked about actually how her Italian degree has helped her in creating concise and clear messaging for complex policy. And I think that facility with using language and with communication is something I would say we see a lot of on these kind of joint programs. Likewise, Sophie Murray, a very recent graduate in Spanish and English language, was snapped up by the newspaper in Portsmouth, where she did an internship last year as a business reporter. And again, that facility with language and communication really stood her in good stead. My last example, and here again, rocket fuel is sort of exactly the right phrase. Kieran, who I graduated in this summer, with a degree in BA German and English literature, and she would wax lyrical about her degree program and how much she enjoyed studying literature in German, and particularly she singled out really enjoying the Black British fiction module in the English literature department. And clearly was making the most of her degree program and has used it to go on to really quickly a very exciting career actually in finance, in international finance. So she's a great example, I think, of how this degree can take you to all sorts of exciting and perhaps unexpected places. So on that note, I would just like to say, hopefully this has been a helpful presentation. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to get into contact with us on these two languages, on the email addresses. And do follow us on Twitter to learn more about the kind of research and activities that we're engaging in. And I just wanted to say thank you ever so much to Chloe for joining me today, and say good luck in your studies, and hopefully we'll see some of you soon. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.